Welcome back to another JJ in the Field. Timely agronomic tips when you need them most. I'm Jonah Johnson.
And I'm Brian Reeb, PCT Sunrise Research Agronomist.
So today we want to mention a couple things as we're hot and heavy in the harvest here in Ohio. We're now entered into almost the second week of November in 2021. And as a lot of crops are coming off this year, we're starting, as you probably have as well, I've noticed that, and you can see kind of behind us here, and we've taken a lot of aerial pictures across our travels here and see a lot of fields that are really greening up. So you think about our October weather on historical weather records, is the warmest October ever recorded since weather data has originated. And so that being said, we just kept on going. It just felt like the Indian summer just kept going. And if you think about the crops standing, weeds were growing. And so as crops are being removed, we're starting to see a lot of fields that are really greened up this fall. And I think you're going to continue to see that. And so even though right now we're in a cold snap, our future weather, near future weather, we're going to be back up in the 60-degree mark into next week. Probably for the entire week, it's going to be sunny and really nice. And so those conditions that are teed back up after these couple hard frosts, it's going to make these winter annual weeds start to grow really heavily. And so the main topic we wanted to talk about today was, if you've been following the trends in agriculture, unfortunately right now a lot of products have escalated in price, our crop inputs for 2022, and a few of those of most importance that we'll mention today is around our herbicides and adjuvants. And so if you've looked at pricing or trying to acquire glyphosate, hence Roundup, or glufosinate products, product names like Liberty, you'll note unfortunately these products have gone up very, very much. And also coupled with the price is they're rather scarce right now in abundance to actually acquire these and get them on farms. So if you have some right now, hold on to that and use it wisely. So what we want to talk about right now is to get the most out of our herbicide programs going forward. It's going to be more important than ever going into 2022 that our fields are clean as possible. So when we get into these situations where we may not be able to incorporate glyphosate into our spray programs in 2022, what can we do in absence of that? And what can we do with smaller volumes of Roundup? And that's essentially what we want to talk about today. So as we go forward, Brian, as we look at fall programs, we're looking at our fall or winter annual weeds. So for our listeners, those are weeds that are going to grow during the winter time. They're not going to die of frost. So we're thinking about weeds like annual bluegrass, chickweed, dandelion, the dead nettle family, typically things that many growers may not really pay closer attention to in the spring. And just in our travels today, Brian, like we've seen from the road, they look really clean. But once we get out here, what do we see?
Yeah, so once you actually get out, you may drive by and kind of take an overview of the field, and we can show some pictures of kind of what you would see. They may appear to be relatively clean, whether you look across the corn stubble or the bean stubble. But when you actually get out and then start looking down and moving some fodder around, you'll actually see a lot of winter annuals that have started to germinate here in the last couple weeks. Like Jonah mentioned, we had a warm spell, we've gone back to cold, but we're going to go back to warm again, and we've had ample moisture in between there. So that's going to stimulate a lot of growth of these winter annuals now as the crop has been removed.
So as we're teed up for some really good growing conditions again, unfortunately, thinking about starting clean in the spring, what should we do? What's a good fall program to clean up what we got out there right now?
So one of the things we typically would start with in a fall program, we'd like to start with a brash, which is a 2,4-D and dicamba premix. So that would be your base program that you would want to start with in the fall. And you want to consult the label for that, but use the highest possible rates that you can in the fall situation for that product. So I would start with a brash, and then from there you really want to get out and scout and see what you have out in your fields, Jonah. You want to look and see which winter annuals you have out there, and then you can add to that program based on what you may see and what you're trying to control.
So say I'm a grower, I got mostly broadleaves out there, hence the chickweed, the purple dead nettles, what have you. But then I get into some of my fields and all of a sudden I say, ooh, I got some winter grasses, bluegrass, the annual grass family. I can't get Roundup. What's an option I can add into that tank and hopefully help clean that up?
That's a good point. So typically in that scenario, that's where glyphosate would be very strong on that, and that's the easy button to push. But in the times we're in today, in this fall, that's not an option, or it's not a viable option. So if you have annual bluegrass, you want to get out and scout, make sure that's what you got, and then you want to use a grass only specific product, and one of those would be a clethodim or section 3. That's going to take care of your emerged grass in the fall. Now, when you mix that with brash, 2,4-D and dicamba, there are potential for antagonism and reduced control. So you want to use the high rate, go to the label check, you want to use the high rate, and you want to make sure you have proper adjuvants with that to ensure proper control. When you apply it in the fall, the temperature swings, we may be warm, we may be cool, things are going to generally work slower. So you want to, keep that in consideration. You're not going to get that quick, immediate kill like you would see with a glyphosate product.
Sure. So some great points to consider when we're looking at our fall application. If you've not done fall applications in the past, and you got some fields that are marginal, really pay attention to that. We can still get an efficacious kill when the temperatures get cold. It may take a little longer, maybe a little more challenging, but we want to make sure you're clean as possible going into spring. So fast forward, Brian, now we're in the spring of 2022. Herbicides, can we not get? We're still balancing that right now. Let's say I was a grower and I had my cornfields going to soybeans. What's a starting example of what to do in our burn down?
So again, if we're going in the springtime and we're going to go to a corn crop, again, we're going to probably want to start with a 2,4-D and dicamba premix, because that's just going to ensure that we can control any of the winter annuals that we may have missed, whether we got a fall burn down applied or we didn't. So you want to have broad spectrum control there. And then you're going to look at, your typical corn premixes that contain atrazine, HPPDs like mesotrione, or topramazone like Callisto, Incinerate, Impact, or Armazon, things that will help give you control when you apply them, plus give you residual control. But consult your premix options for your corn program that'll have additional components that will give you kind of that knockdown effect of the weeds that are already emerged if you didn't get a fall application on.
Great point, Brian. So now we're talking, okay, I have soybean fields into 2022 going from corn. What are some of my options for successful start with our soybean crop?
So if we want to get a successful start in our soybeans, we're going to start with, obviously you got to check your trait platform, which soybean crop are you going to be planting. Primarily for us here, we're in the E3, the Enlist platform. So the Enlist choline, the 2,4-D, the Enlist 1 product, that's a great option to start. There's no plant back restrictions with that if you plant the E3 soybeans. So that's a great start. But then just like the corn programs, you're going to want to layer in multiple mode of action residual components. Sharpen will be a very big one for emerged weeds to help control them. And then you're going to look at premixes that have, other components such as an ALS like a Classic, or another PPO like Valor. Residual components like metolachlor or Zidua, those won't give you control of emerged weeds, but they'll extend your control as that crop is emerging. So just kind of pay attention to what you're combining there when you're looking at a program to add things to.
Great. So you think about last 3 years, we've gotten situations where burn down were applied in the spring, and then it got wet for 4 to 6 weeks, and a lot of those residuals started to decompose and weren't as efficacious. And so residuals are going to be important. Keep in mind those stacked residuals when we go to a post application, to incorporate those again, because if not, we may run into the problem with summer annuals later in the season. And our biggest concern is we don't want an over-reliance on post application for guys that can't get adequate herbicide options here in the early spring. So just talk to one of us or one of the ASAs, and we'll make sure we walk you through some hopefully some great alternatives if we can't get what your first choice is in our herbicide applications.
All right, so Jonah, we're back in the fall situation. We've had exceptional yields. We've heard of guys taking off, record yields for their farms across the state. What does that typically mean when we have record yields? Well, we're going to have record amounts of fodder. You can look behind us, these corn stalks are all still going to be standing. Are there some options that we have, to take advantage of all that fodder that we've accumulated through the growing season, that we can apply here in the fall and maybe make use of that? Do we have anything?
Sure. So yeah, to Brian's point, exceptional yield is very exciting right now to hear the numbers coming in, and there's exceptional amount of fodder, residue. Machines do a great job of processing a lot of that material through the machine, but this type of topic is not new. Ever since BT traded hybrids have come out, people thought residue has been better, it's lasted longer, it's not degraded over the wintertime. And so if I'm not a guy that can till, a heavy tillage guy, I'm a no-till, ridge till, strip till type of guy, tillage is obviously not going to be a really great management tool to get rid of that residue and bury it and let the microbes break it down. So what can we do to help do that? And so we're past harvest. we want to bring us to your attention because if we get into this warm spell again next week, any type of microbial decomposition products, and one, for example, we have a lot of experience with is one that we use is our PCT digester. And so the digesters, it's several strains of microbial class of bugs that can be easily mixed in with your fall herbicide burn down program. And when we get the temperatures that are proper for that, it can help get on those stalks. It breaks down the waxy outer layer, penetrates that. Soybean residue, same thing, or wheat residue, even our cover crops to help break those down in the spring. We've had really good luck with all those. And so that can be applied. It works its way in there and helps decompose those stalks, lignins, and that material. And so when we come into the springtime, those will be much easier as our planters go across those corn stalks for beans, drills, even going into bean stubble where we've had a lot of residue there. It can help those crowns or those roots, they just break up and shatter so much easier.
So if we're going to apply that product and we're looking to apply it the fall, what's our time frame? Can we still apply it? You said it's going to be warm next week. Is that still an option? How long do you think we have to make these applications yet this year?
Sure. So temperatures of essence here, and so we think about we go into this warm spell over the next week and a half. That's always better. The warmer the better for these microbes. Think about it's a living organism. It gets in these plant residue, and once it gets inside of it, then it's somewhat more protected. So 50 is kind of the threshold. We've had luck down in the 40s. We've had temperatures from where it was warm and then got cold very quickly after the fact, and still had some pretty good luck. One trial I go back to was in the winter of 2017. A week just like this, got up into the 50s and 60s. They sprayed that hole till it got cold again, and they stopped in a certain part of the field. And fast forward into 2018 spring, the grower couldn't remember exactly where they sprayed, where they quit, but they could tell the second they hit that because the stalks were so much more rigid and the planter started to drag hard, the tractor tugged a little tougher. So it was very evident, the stalks shattered, they broke away very easily. So just some things to think about when it gets cold. As we don't like to be outside either, the microbes won't be as efficacious in reproducing. And then once we get into a really cold snap, like down to, below probably 35, then the chances of success will start to diminish. But just some things to think about to help manage residue, as we have some more favorable weather still into November here. So, okay, so we covered some pretty good topics today. And so you think about our fall weed control program that Brian mentioned, some excellent tips on what to look at. We want to start clean here in 2022. So if you got fields that are starting to green up out there, get after those quickly. Don't let those escapes go into next year, especially in the absence of glyphosate, and even some other products we've heard are in limited supply. So make sure you watch out for that. If you're thinking about doing some residue management into the fall, and this better weather is always better, but once we start to get cold, then there might be something that you pull out of the tank at that point. But we can always spray down into the 40s till almost it's spraying out of the boom and still get some type of kill. Now it's going to take a while. Don't expect instant kill, to Brian's point earlier. So with that, if you have more questions, feel free to follow up with anybody on the PCT team or any of our ASAs. I'm Jonah Johnson. Thanks for watching.